everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome to another fabulous Power to Fly Chat and Learn event. My name is Meg. I am part of Power to Fly's hosting team here, and I am so excited to get started with today's event. We're going to go on a couple quick housekeeping items for everybody, just to make sure y'all are ready to go and ready to be, prepared and make the most out of today's session. So if these are, if you're a frequent flyer with us, these will be kind of old hat, but I'll try and go through quickly. So one thing I want to highlight for all of you is the participation aspect of these events. So as you know, as our community members, these events are all about you, and we want to make sure that you get the most out of the time that you spend with us. So you can participate in a number of different ways. My favorite is to turn your cameras on if you'd like to share your smiling, maskless faces with us safely. No worries if you don't want to. It's not at all, no pressure, you're not required. But just know that, you don't have to be Instagram perfect to show up to this, right? Like you can join us with your messy buns, your furry coworkers, your non-traditional workspaces. We want to meet you where you are. So please do not stand on ceremony. Join us however you feel most comfortable. Now, if you have any kind of privacy concerns or anything like that, totally understood. As long as you don't come off mute during today's presentation or during today's session, you will not show up on the live recording, the recording or the live stream of today's event. Now, again, you can turn your cameras on and off all you want. As long as you don't come off mute, nothing will show up. Now, if you do want to participate in a different way, you can always type in questions or comments. So you can feel free to put those questions or comments into the group's Zoom chat. If you have a question that you want me to ask that you want to be kept anonymous, not a problem. Just throw it into the chat, and instead of sending it to everyone, you're going to pick my name, Meg Alexander, from the drop-down menu. I'll be in the chat monitoring and trying to get to as many questions as we can. Now, we did have a couple people that wrote in questions that we want to try and touch on, but we might need a little more context or clarity on. So we'll call out those questions when we get to them, but if you submitted a question and you're hoping that we'll answer it, kind of keep your ears pricked and wait, because if we need more context or details on your question, we will ask it, and hopefully you'll be able to come on and talk to us about, give us the details that we need to be able to address your question. So you have all those options of how you can participate. Please feel free to, keep that chat hopping and active. Now, like I did say earlier, today's session is being recorded. Now, what that means for you is great news. You don't have to take notes. You get to kick back and listen and absorb everything that Angela is going to share with us today. Now, the best part about that is you don't have to take notes, and you don't have to worry about missing out on like a resource that someone mentions, or what was tip 5 out of 6. Like, you don't have to worry about missing those. You can always go back and rewatch this recording. We're going to be sending an email out to everybody that registered within about 1 to 2 business days. So it'll probably get it Monday next week. And that email that you get from us is going to have a link on there where you can rewatch this recording where we post it on our website. So super great. But let's say that Angela says something like mind-blowing. You cannot wait to tell it and share it with like a coworker or a friend or a relative. You don't have to wait the 1 to 2 business days. You can always head on over to our YouTube channel. I'll share the link for that in the chat thread here in just a couple minutes. But you can always head over there. The live streams are usually like posted and anchored to our page within about 5 to 15 minutes at the end of the stream. You'll be able to go back and watch the recording. And you can always, search out on that channel. We have a ton of our past chats posted over there, and you can search our entire archives right on our website as well. Now, I do want to encourage y'all to keep up with us. We have a ton of social media channels we're part of. We are at Power to Fly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, in addition to YouTube. And we share really great resources on all of those places as well. Stuff like Meet the Recruiter videos, job descriptions for new hot listings that have just been posted. We share blog posts that come from all areas of kind of our working and personal lives, stuff on mental health in the workplace, as well as, making career choices for yourself. So definitely avail yourself of those free resources, and follow us there if you'd like. But you're also incredibly welcome, if you'd like, to, take photos or video as we go. feel free to let your social network know that you are learning with Power to Fly. The more recognition and the more knowledge that we can get out about these free resources, the better. We want to get them into the hands of as many people as possible. So please feel free to share that. We would love to reshare, retweet, repost, whatever you tag us in. So please feel free to tag us there. Now, I'm very, very excited to introduce you to today's speaker. Angela Choi is a purpose and fulfillment coach. Now, Angela helps driven professionals overcome limiting beliefs, cultivate the right mindset, and take aligned action to fulfill their purpose. Now, her coaching stems from experiences and lessons learned over a decade of finding her purpose through the corporate, startup, and nonprofit worlds across the US, Africa, Asia, and Europe, all whilst juggling self-judgment, familial pressure, and societal expectations. So all of this tells me that I've been juggling societal pressure and social expectations under much less stressful circumstances than Angela has. So I cannot wait to hear more about her and the 6 steps that she's going to be talking about. Now, I'll also be sharing links in the chat to where you can get a free copy of 6 Steps to Living Your Purpose. But I'm really excited to kind of dig in on the meat and potatoes of today's event. Now, Angela, before we talk about the main takeaways people can expect, is there anything else you want to add to your bio, something that we should know about you before we get started?
No, all good. Thank you for that beautiful intro.
Yep, and I muted myself. You're welcome. I just read what they put up on the slides. So somebody from Power to Fly must have written a very great bio for you. So thanks to our behind the scenes team. All right, so last but not least, before we get started, what you're seeing on the screen in front of you are some of the main takeaways that you can expect to get from today's event. Now, we identified these both by talking to Angela prior to this session, as well as by looking at all of the questions that you all submitted when you registered. So all of this to say, here's what you can kind of expect us to cover, but if you took the time out of your day to be here and spend time with Power to Fly, we want that to be worthwhile. So if you are here and are here with us for the live stream, please understand you have the ability to drive today's conversation. If Angela starts talking about something and you want more details on it, and you want to expand on that, please let us know. We would absolutely love to be able to bring you the answers that you want and that you need. So please feel free to send in questions if you've got comments on what we're talking about. And as we said earlier, if you had submitted a question and you want to give us some more details or more context, please feel free. Let us know in the chat, like if that's your question and you've got pertinent info that'll help Angela to give you a great answer. So we're going to discuss some actionable steps that you can take to understand what might be blocking your growth professionally. We're going to talk about ways that you can connect with your core values, as well as some strategies to help you build a life that you are passionate about. Now, Angela, to kick us off, we wanted to give you the floor to talk about your 6 steps. So I'm going to turn the stage over to you and we will start questions after you are finished. Sound good?
Sounds good. Thank you, Meg. And just to piggyback off of what Meg said, I want this to be as interactive as possible. So if you guys have questions or comments along the way as I'm speaking, feel free to type it in the chat box, whether publicly or if you want to DM Meg, and I'm happy to address that in real time. So yeah, happy to get squared away and super excited to be here today. Thank you everyone for being here. There are many other things that you could have been doing, but you chose to spend the hour here. So grateful to be here with all of you. And as Meg said, I am a purpose and fulfillment coach. And what I do is I really support people in tuning into and living their purpose. And even before I get to the 6 steps, I just wanted to take some time to share with you how I define purpose. I think it's important because I think that when we talk about purpose, a lot of people associate their purpose with their careers, which is very understandable because we spend the bulk of our waking hours working. However, I take more of a holistic approach to purpose, which is why this workshop is titled, how to create a life that you love both in and outside of work, because I think that it's important to find balance in our lives, and that we can be expressing our purpose beyond the type of work that we're doing. And so the way that I define purpose is that I think it's about really utilizing your unique gifts, talents, experiences, life perspectives in ways that feel authentic and meaningful to you, both in and outside of work. So this can happen at work, but this can also happen within your family, your community. And again, this is why today's topic is focused on in and outside of work, because there's a lot going on in our lives aside from what's happening professionally. And so what I want to share with you today is my 6 steps to living your purpose, and how you can do that again in work, outside of work. And if you guys have any thoughts or questions as I'm going through my 6 steps, feel free to type it in the chat box. So the first step is that it's really important for us to be still and be present. And what I mean by that is that how often have you found yourself like doing something and you're like physically present, but your mind is elsewhere, right? So it's like you're not present to what it is that you're doing. And so the first step is really living with presence and really tuning into yourself. Because when you do that, and there are multiple ways of doing this. So like people would say, either go meditate or engage in a mindfulness practice. And when you sit and meditate, normally when you do that, like immediately you're going to be bombarded with thoughts, right? And it's going to feel like you're not doing it right. Or, I came here for a Zen moment, but now all of these thoughts are, swarming in my head. But I want to let you know that that's normal. It's recognizing that, oh, a thought has popped up and I'm going to let the thought go and continue sitting with myself. And the reason why this is really important is because once you get to a point where you recognize that, oh, I'm having these thoughts, I'm not my thoughts, you will get to a point where you will be able to experience more silence within yourself. And when you get to that point, that's where your inner voice of wisdom can come out. But it can only come out if you give yourself the space to be with yourself and to let go of the normal bombardment of thoughts that we have. So that's the first step. The second step is to reflect on your past. Now, when you think back to your childhood, especially like before the age of 7, we were very uninhibited beings, and it was very easy for us to just be ourselves. But somewhere along the way, that became challenging because of expectations that other people have of us, or we're expected to behave a certain way, or we're expected to be like good children. And so then we started stifling parts of ourselves. When you go back to your childhood and you think about what you were good at, or the things that you enjoyed, or the things that brought you happiness, this will give you insight as to what you could be pursuing present day to go back to your authentic self. So that's the second step, reflect on your past. The third step is to align with your values. If you know what your values are and what you stand for, anytime that you're at a crossroads in your life where you need to make a decision, you'll know if it's the right decision for you if that decision aligns with your values. And then how do you actually go about like knowing what your core or top 3 to 5 values are? I would say that there are several ways to do this. The first of which is to think about moments in your life that brought you incredible joy and meaning. Like, what are some of the commonalities or common threads between those moments in your life? And then that will give you insight as to what's important to you. Another way to think about this is like, when you see other people, what is it that you admire about them, or what is it that you feel jealous about? Because that will also give you insight as to what it is that you want your life to be about. So like, instead of focusing on the jealousy, use that to inform you as to like what it is that you want in your life, because it's telling you something, this feeling of jealousy. And then the third way of doing that is also just like thinking about situations where you've been very angry, because underneath the anger is pain, and pain exists when we feel like our core values or things that are important to us have been violated. So when you think about experiences that have brought you anger, it can also inform you as to which of your values have been violated. So these are 3 ways in which you can align with your values, which is step 3. Step 4 is to do without your inner critic. So we all have an inner critic, if not like a committee of critics up here, telling us that like we're not good enough, it's too late to start this, why even bother when other people are doing it? And the reality is that that voice will never go away, because that voice is there to protect us. It's there because, evolutionarily speaking, like thousands of years ago, if we did not blend in with people in our immediate group, you could very well die, right? You needed to be part of a pack to survive. And like evolutionarily speaking, that type of mentality has like followed us, right? Like we don't want to stand out too far from the crowd because we don't want to be isolated, and we want to fit in, right? So like from evolutionary perspective, like that inner critic is there to protect you. So like don't see your inner critic as an enemy, but see that there's a purpose to your inner critic, and recognize that your inner critic is not you. You're the person who recognizes that there's this inner critic within you. And then to take it a step further, it's like, can you give your inner critic a name? Like, what are the qualities that your inner critic embodies, so that you can recognize that it's not you, it's like a part of you that's trying to protect you, but it's not you. And if you want to take it a step further, you can also have what I call an inner mentor. So the person, and usually the way that you embody your inner mentor is like, who are you 10, 20 years down the road? Like if you were to ask future you, like, what is it that you could be doing now? You would be leaning into wisdom and hope, right? So that's like another part of you, so that that can override the inner critic. Now for step 5, this is where the fun part comes in. It's very simple. Dream big. What would your life look like if you didn't have your fears holding you back? What would your life look like if you didn't care about what other people think about you? What would you look like if you had, what would your life look like if you had an unlimited amount of money, right? So like really allowing yourself and giving yourself permission to think about what it is that you want your life to be about, day to day, the people you spend time with, you know, maybe where you live, what is it that you're doing? Like give yourself permission to dream big. This step is really important because it's really easy to box ourselves in based on our current situations, but our current situations are not a representation of what the future can be like, because at any moment you can change your thoughts, which can change your reality, which can change your future. And then the last step is to take small and consistent action, because anyone can dream, but if you're dreaming and not taking action, then you're just spinning in circles in your head, right? So what this means is like whatever it is that you want in your life, like what's one small thing that you can do to propel that dream forward, to show the universe that you're working in conjunction with it to make things happen, right? And to do that on a consistent basis, so that you are propelling yourself forward towards what it is that you want. So in a nutshell, those are the 6 steps to really living a purposeful, meaningful life, both in and outside of work. And Meg's opening up the floor for questions. And I know that we also had questions before the live session, and I'm happy to address those as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angela. That was a really good breakdown. And I'm actually really excited that we did that kind of level setting for people, because I think it'll make it easier when we go in to talk about people's, questions specifically. So I'm really excited to start digging in here. One of the questions that was asked a ton was about motivating yourself to be passionate and how you can bring that passionate self to work. And this is something that I also struggled with a lot. I mean, I still do it from time to time. But like, what do you recommend if we are trying to, find that passion and motivate ourselves to have it within, from the inside out?
Yeah, I mean, There are a couple of things I want to say about this. Like the first thing that pops up in mind is when like people don't feel passionate about what it is that they're doing at work. More often than not, it's because what they're doing is repetitive and it's hard to add like fire to something when you're constantly just doing the same things day in, day out. And so like what I would encourage people to do is like to think back to what your why is. Like, why did you decide to join this organization, or why did you decide to engage in this type of work, and what is it that you actually want to be doing, and like what is possible within the realm of your current role and organization, and then to speak up to your manager to ask for opportunities to do what it is that you want to be doing, and then see if it's possible. So like really like, again, like understanding the bigger picture of like why you're in a certain role or company, and then thinking about within like your current role and the realm of possibilities, like what could you be doing but beyond what it is that you're currently doing, and then speak up about it.
I like that. Okay. Now, when we're trying to build that life that we're passionate about, do you think that a mentor is crucial to that? Do you think it is, something that is a necessity? Do you think it's a nice add? How do you feel about mentorship as it pertains to this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it ever hurts to have a mentor, whether that's in a professional capacity or a personal capacity, because essentially a mentor ideally is a few steps ahead of you and has done, what you hope to do, or has experienced what you are currently experiencing. And so in an ideal situation, they're able to provide words of wisdom or advice so that maybe you don't have to make the same mistakes, or that you can see things from a different perspective. And so I would absolutely encourage it, whether that's like personally or professionally.
Okay, cool. And just a reminder, y'all, as we're going through these questions, if we're touching on one that you asked and you want to give us more info or feedback on what the response is that we're giving, please feel free to do that in the chat. All right, so let's talk about what things that block people from living joyfully. Are there, more common or very common, subjects with or topics within this, or do you think that it's really unique to each person?
Um, I think that, I mean, there are two things I want to say about this. I guess the first thing is that um, this is such an open question. So like the first thing that comes to mind are sometimes there are circumstances in people's lives that may be beyond their control, that don't bring them joy or are bringing them challenges, right? So there's that. I think that the other thing I want to say is that there's this quote, it's not what happens to you that matters, but how you respond to what happens to you that matters. And so I think that one of the biggest things that really prevent people from living joyfully is their mindset and the way that they're thinking about things that are happening in their lives. And so some of the most common blocks, I would say, would include fears, right? Like fear of failure. And then on the opposite side of the same coin, fear of success, like, feeling like maybe imposter syndrome and feeling like you may not be able to live up to a certain role or expectation, right? And then also just fear of what other people will think of you if you try something and it doesn't work out. And so it's that fear is a big thing holding people back. And then I guess like along those lines, when you're living a life that is not true to who you are, and you're living for other people, or you're living based on what you think other people expect of you, that also leads to resentment and misery. And so there's also an element of that. And sometimes it's really hard to parse that, right? Because the people around us have good intentions. They think that they know what is a good life for us because they think they know us, but that's not always the case, right? Because we're all like we're all so unique, and we all have different life experiences and different life perspectives, right? And so I think that's another component when we're living based on what we think other people think we should be doing.
That I honestly, that's a powerful statement right there. Like I don't know if I probably there's many people out there in the audience that can relate to this, but I did not know what I wanted to do. And a lot of what I ended up doing was kind of like any port in a storm. So you figure out ways to not hate whatever you're doing, but a lot of the times it doesn't feel like it's really driven by passion, right? And it didn't, I mean, it took me a very long time to figure this out, but my mom had sent me some quote and it was from Dr. Adam Grant. And it basically, like, I'm going to garble it, but it basically talked about how when you're thinking about what you want to do, it is far more important to be, instead of thinking about impressing other people, what's going to be impressive to you? Not even just impressive.
Yeah.
What is like, what means something to you? Because
Correct.
focusing on things like the title and whatever, like, you know, we live in the age of what, like Instagram, right? Everything is kind of the highlight reel of what we've got going. People love to brag, and things like titles and whatever are make that easy to do. Do you think that it, like, at least in what you're experiencing, do you see that fear as being based like strongly in what other people think about what this person is doing? Or do you think it's more about like, I don't want to fail? Like, what do you see, at least, you know, in your experience?
Can you repeat the question between the two choices that you gave?
Yeah. So I'm just curious, like, when you're talking about that fear that kind of blocks people, do
Yeah.
you find that it's a fear of like failure or something that's like internal that they're worried about? Or do you think that it's fear based on more of those external factors of like, well, how am I going to explain this to people? Or what are they going to think?
I think that they're intertwined because I think also just like speak from my personal experience as well. Sometimes when you have enough people saying something or thinking a certain way, you internalize what other people are saying, and then it becomes difficult to parse out what was yours versus what was placed on you, especially if there's been conditioning that's been running for many years. Yeah.
That makes sense.
I think the other, just also like based on what you shared with me, um, I want to say that, like, because you said, it took me a while to figure out what it is that I want to do, right? And that's something to which I can relate. When you were talking about my journey, I can't tell you how many career pivots I made in my 20s and how many different things I tried, and like nothing seemed to stick. And that's where like the self-judgment came from. Looking back with hindsight now, like what I want to say is that it's okay to not know what you want to do. It's only not okay because we think it's not okay, because society makes it seem like it's not okay to know what you want to do, because there's this expectation that, for example, when you're like 2 years into college, you're supposed to figure out what you want to major in. And then, upon graduation, you're supposed to figure out what it is that you want to do for a living. And like in a perfect world, that first job is going to lead you to the next role, and you're going to climb the ladder, and like, everything is set for life. So there is this like unspoken expectation that you're supposed to have things figured out. And when you don't, then it feels like you are lacking, or you're deficient or in something, or you're behind, or you're not doing something correctly. And that steals a lot of joy, right? Because you are measuring yourself against these expectations that are not real. They're not real. Even people who have had jobs or have stayed in the same company for many, many years, it doesn't mean that they know what it is that they're doing. A lot of people are not happy at their jobs, even if they've been somewhere for many years and have climbed the ladder, right? And so comparison is also a thief of joy. And like, if you think that, you're not doing something right based on what other people are doing or what we're supposed to be doing, that also leads to a lot of dissatisfaction with oneself and one's life.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point. And I'm going to make a reference, and please don't laugh at it for being sort of childish, but I just watched this the other night. I'm a huge Marvel fan. Like, I don't know if y'all can see, but there's like superhero ladies all over my walls. So I was rewatching one of the Avengers movies, and Thor's talking to his mom about, what I was supposed to be, and thinks he's a failure and blah, blah, blah. And she says something about how you should stop wasting time trying to be what you're supposed to be, or attempting to be that, like attempting to get there, and instead focus on who you are. And I thought it was like a beautiful sentiment, especially I mean, it's not a uniquely American trait, but there is a lot of focus on like constantly being better. You're never satisfied because you have to improve. You have to do better. You have to succeed more. And I really appreciate that idea of like, just because that's how it's supposed to be doesn't mean that's how it's going to be. And it doesn't mean that it's wrong if it's not what everybody else thinks it should be. I think that's wonderful.
Correct. And something that I've been really trying to lean into, and like I encourage other people to lean into, is like, if something feels good to you, then it probably means that you're moving in the right direction. So like lean into what feels good to you versus like what you think other people will think or what other people will say. As use that as your compass instead of what other people are doing.
Love that. And we did get a question in the chat here from Terrence. Terrence had asked, how do these steps apply to very young people? For instance, my students don't yet know a lot of these answers, but they're beyond the age that they pursue things automatically. Step 5, for instance, seems particularly difficult when counseling secondary students. So I find this question very interesting because you're right. I mean, like, I feel like I was kind of directed, like a lot of people are, into like, okay, you finish high school and then you go to college and you get a job or you get your degree because you're not employable without it. And then you get a job and this is how things go. Like it seemed very like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Correct.
How do you see this? Do you think that applying these steps changes based on, like you said, whether you're very early in your career, maybe you haven't even started a career yet, versus somebody that's been around for a while, has this experience?
Yeah. Well, first off, hi, Terrence. Terrence is a friend. So a couple of things I want to say. The first of which is that I think that the questions that I posed are applicable regardless of age. Like, what were you like as a kid? What did you enjoy doing? Or like, what are your values? What do you stand for? Like, regardless of age, I think these are important questions to ask. I think that what is different based on the age group is the fact that when we are, for example, in our teenage years, like our brains are just not as fully developed. And it's so easy to get sucked into things because of peer pressure or just the fact that, again, our brains are not fully formed yet. And so I want to say that it's also normal for people to do things that may not fully align to who they are because they just haven't reached that maturity level yet and they're still developing. And I think that it's a normal rite of passage, right? Like even something like quarter life crisis, which I really don't like the term because there's such a negative connotation to the word crisis. Like, I think it's a rite of passage for people to experience quarter life crises. It means that you're questioning what it is that you want out of life. It's not supposed to be a bad thing. And so that's to say that I think it's okay that it's difficult for secondary students to be grappling with these things, and that it's a normal progression of one's journey. I don't know if that fully answered the question, but those are my thoughts. If you have follow-up questions, feel free to type it in the chat box, Terrence.
Yeah, please. Loving that question and loving that response. I'm glad I was muted because I was making a bunch of like noises. But like, forgive the dramatics, y'all, but Angela coming in with a hot tip over here. Like, she's not kidding. All right. Like, it's okay to not know what you're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. Literally no one. They tell you that they know, they're full of it. We're all kind of deciding on the go every day, right? And I think you're right. It's very important to think of these things not as, oh, well, I don't know what I want to do, and that's a problem, and see it more as like, okay, I don't know what I want to do yet.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. And I completely agree with you on the crisis thing. Like, I tend to see it as sort of like a reset or like a refresh kind of thing of like, okay, well, this was working to a certain point and now my life is changing in this way. And so it's not a crisis. It's like, all right, well, that's not going to work going forward. So what do I need to change? What do I need to do more of, do less of, like all that kind of thing. So that's great. And Terrence is also agreeing. Very, very cool. We have dedicated rites of passage, which tries to attack and approach this for new students. So I think that's a wonderful way to think about it. Like, if you position it as a rite of passage, it makes it more of a natural progression and less of a deviation from the path. And Correct. Before we go, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just affirming what you're saying. And I think another thing I just want to say, which is like related to what I was saying before about failure, is that there's also nothing wrong with things going wrong.
Yes.
And I just really want to emphasize this because you know, in my 20s, I was at my second job. So my first job, I was working in financial services consulting. My second job, I was working in healthcare operations. And at that point, I had reached out to someone because I was considering applying to law school. And this individual that I spoke with, point blank said to me that I had wasted my time. He was like, "You've wasted your time because clearly consulting wasn't right for you. And now working at the startup isn't right for you. And now you want to go back to law school." So that was just a waste of the last few years. And I felt very discouraged and demoralized after talking to him because he had years of experience on me. And it was like someone who I was supposed to look up to, who was telling me essentially that I had wasted my life, which was like not very pleasant to hear. And so I think
it's not useful in the moment. Like, come on.
Not useful. But I think that you know, he wouldn't say this if he didn't believe in. I think we live in a society where people think like, oh, if you're doing something and it doesn't last and it doesn't get you to where you want to be, then it's a waste of time. Like, and I don't think that's true. And I think that this is like where the unconditioning happens, right? It's because like every experience that we've had has informed us as like what isn't working for us, so that we can figure out what does work for us, right? So I think there is value to something, even if it doesn't work, even if it goes wrong. And I think that we need to have more acceptance of this. And that's why I want to bring it up, because I want to let everyone here know that I think it's okay when things don't go as planned. I think it's okay when things don't feel right for you. It's just another data point for you to have to say, okay, this doesn't work. So what can I do next that will work? So it's like, I believe that like in order to figure out what it is that you truly want to be doing, part of the process is figuring out what it is that you don't want to be doing. And then in order to figure out what it is that you don't want to be doing, you actually have to just go and do said thing, right? Because you can speculate all you want as to whether or not, am I going to enjoy this? Am I not going to enjoy this? How will I feel? But like, you won't actually know unless you do the thing. And it's in the process of doing the thing and learning, oh, this works, this doesn't work, that will give you the next data point to move forward in your life.
Oh my gosh, yes. Loving all of this, y'all. Like I cannot wait to be sending this recording out to some of my friends, because there's a lot of us that still need to hear this, y'all. Like I'm 36 and I still need to hear this. So even if you are, you know, and I relate hard to the law school thing too. I actually went to law school for a year before I realized I've wanted to do this since I was 12. I hate this. What am I going to do? And it was terrifying. And it led to, geez, like a full 10 years of take the job I can find because I have to repay law school debts now. But a lot of scrambling, and instead of turning inward to try and figure out like why didn't I like this? Like, what about it did I like, and what can I, explore there? I feel like instead my reaction, like probably a lot of people, because I'm not that special and unique, was to be like, okay, but what do I do next? I got to find something. Like, and I ended up grasping at straws. Like I ended up being a paralegal for like 5 years because that was the skill I had. And it's fine, but like I also didn't do any further digging on that. I got a job as a paralegal and was like, okay, great. Now I'm like safe for now, like you found a place of stasis. But yeah, I think that's a very good way to put it. Thank you so much for detailing that out for us.
Yeah.
Oh, and before we go, I just wanted to say, I really liked what you talked about at the very beginning of this answer about peer pressure, because I feel like that's a term that like most of us honestly think about it in terms of like drugs or, illicit activities or things that you're not supposed to do. But like you can have peer pressure in all kinds of ways that is seemingly like positive, right? Like I was basically peer pressured into, going to not going to law school, but going to college. Absolutely. Like that was, It was expected. It was, bare minimum was that you would apply to college. And it's not that that's a bad thing necessarily, but like, there wasn't really any exploration or introduction of other options, things like trades or working for a couple of years before I went to college to try and figure out, what I did want to do and what I didn't. Simona's in the chat saying peer approval is a drug in its own way. And that is 100% accurate. Yes.
it's salient in our lives, I think, especially in, well, definitely in your teens, but also in your 20s and 30s. You know, there's again this narrative that, you know, you're meant to find that job, and then you're meant to find that partner, and you're meant to have two and a
Yes.
half children and that nice house. And so there's a lot of peer pressure in that regard as well. I think that can't speak necessarily for 40s and 50s, haven't been there yet, but I think also, like, as people get older, one of the beautiful things about aging and getting older is that you give less of a crap of what other people
Yes.
think of you, because you just realize,
Oh,
like, this is my life, and like I want to do what it is that I want to do. So I do think that it becomes easier with age, because time is finite. Like, I think people really are able to lean into that more as they get older.
oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Like my outlook and how I perceive everything. Like there's a reason the quarter life crisis thing is a thing, right? It's because when you go in from your 20s into your 30s, like you're starting off as like a baby adult. Like you think you're an adult, right? Because you can drink and you can drive and you can do all of these things. But like you're not actually an adult. None of us were. I'm kind of still not adult, but like there's some sort of change that happens like late 20s, early 30s, where like suddenly you're no longer the young pup in the room. And I loved that. That was great because no longer were you like kind of getting those like sidelong glances of like, okay, dude, that's fine. The adults are talking now.
Right.
And so, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because you're kind of, you find yourself in a different stage of your life. And yes, you have to like do this kind of like reinvestigation because there's been a big paradigm shift for you. And I think you're right. I think it's very smart to look at it that way because, yeah, there might be common areas, you know, like 20s to 30s, 50 to 60 people have usually a lot of like, there's a lot of that like midlife crisis thing that is talked about. But if you, like we talked about, you know, if you think about it in terms of, you know, needing that refresh or needing like to kind of reevaluate, that could happen at all throughout your life. And that's
Correct.
okay. Then you don't have to be blindsided if something happens like a pandemic and you have to suddenly reevaluate, you know, are the things in my life doing what I need them to do? Am I passionate about this or is it draining me? So
Correct.
I like that. I'm talking way too much. I'm going to like try and make sure we get back to more of Angela.
Good.
A lot of people wanted to know about how to stop overthinking. This person said, I know this is something that doesn't allow me to achieve fulfillment. I do this as well. So what do you suggest in a situation where you are allowing overthinking to either prevent or cloud, you know, actions?
Yeah, so here's the thing. Thoughts pop up and we have no control over what thoughts pop up. You may be sitting here right now listening to me, and all of a sudden you may be thinking about your second grade classmate that did something to you at lunchtime many, many years ago. And that thought just popped up randomly. And it may not have happened right now, but maybe when you get off this call, another thought will pop up. And so this is to say that, like, the thoughts will never stop popping up. It's just how our brains are hardwired. But what we do have control over is if we run with the thoughts. And so let's say that thought of that second grade classmate just popped up right now. You have a choice as to whether or not you're going to continue thinking about your second grade classmate, or if you're going to return back to the present moment and hopefully listen to what it is that I'm saying. And so this is a practice that you put into your life. Like, okay, the thought has popped up, but I'm actively going to make a decision not to run with the thought. And this is just going back to step 1 of the 6 steps I shared, which is be still and be present. And so being present means, like, I'm going to make a choice over and over again to come back to this present moment and not let myself run with my thoughts. It takes practice. And this is why meditation or whatever mindfulness practice that people have is important, because it's when you sit down to meditate that all the thoughts are going to come at you at like 60 miles per hour. And it's like, again, every time the thought pops up, it's showing yourself compassion and saying, I'm not going to follow the thought. I'm going to choose not to follow the thought. And it takes practice. It takes practice, many years of practice. I've been meditating for the last 7 years and the thoughts still pop up and I still have to make a choice and say, I'm not going to follow the thoughts. And it's something that you may not get the first time around, the second time around, the 10th time around, but don't give up on it. And eventually you're going to notice and you're going to see the differences in your life. I can see it more clearly now than I did 7 years ago. Like, I'm more able to say, like, oh, this thought popped up. It doesn't serve me. It doesn't make me feel good about myself. Why am I going to choose to run with this thought? I'm not going to. I choose not to. Because my happiness is more important. The way that I love myself is more important than this thought that is not true. Most thoughts are not true. We think that they're true, but are they absolutely true with a capital T? Most of the time, I would say like 99% of the time, it's not true.
Well, and even if they have a grain of truth to them, there's always, like internal biases or beliefs that might cloud them. This is all smacking very, very much against the or lining up with the therapy session I had earlier this week with a lot of my therapists talking to me about, like, thoughts are not facts. And just because these things happen, like, you have this thought, has that been confirmed literally anywhere else? If yes, let's talk about the sources. If not, why has it not been confirmed? Probably because it's not true. And I love what you said about, how that mindfulness, like, it is a practice, right? And so I like, I'm really bad with meditation, but still, kind of attempting and making headway. And one of the things my therapist started telling me about was, like, to kind of think of it like mosquitoes, like when those thoughts pop in, it's that practice of, like, continuously, like, monitoring what's going on to, like, smack the mosquito and get it away, as opposed to just saying, well, they're going to keep coming, so I might as well just let them bite me. Like, it does feel very repetitive, but when you think about it as a small repetitive action, as opposed to, like, I'm going to struggle with this every day of my life, and I should have this down by now because I'm an adult and I have willpower or whatever. Like, I think it is a lot easier to think of it in terms of, like, a small thing that you have to keep doing.
Correct. This is where the self-compassion comes in, to not judge yourself if the thought comes up over and over again, because you don't have control over the thoughts that pop up, and to just be non-judgmental and to just be observant as to what is coming up, and then letting it go.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Feeling this hard today. All right. We had a lot of people that wrote in with questions about jobs that they have currently that are not fulfilling. One person said they wanted to know if it's possible to live a happy life when your job doesn't fulfill you. This person also specified, which I do think is a very important context to give, that they can't really look for a new job at this time. So there are a lot of people that come to chats like this who are not resourced enough, don't have the luxury of being able to say, well, this doesn't work for me, I got to go find another job. And so I think it is really important to highlight, situations like this, because it's not that you can't do anything. It's just a little bit different, right? What would you say to this person? Like, is it possible to have that happy life if your job is unfulfilling?
Yes and no. So I'm going to explain this. First off, I just want to take a step back for a second. And I don't know who asked the question. If the person's here, I would love more context as well. But the first thing I would ask is it really not possible to get a job right now? Because I would really encourage people not to let their circumstances dictate what is possible and not possible. So, like, really understanding why someone thinks that it's not possible to apply for a job. Again, I recognize that sometimes there are life situations that really make things seem impossible, but there's a difference between, like, something really being impossible versus you thinking that it's impossible. So that's the first thing that I want to say. The second thing, can you be happy even if your job doesn't make you feel fulfilled? Yes and no. So yes, because I think that, again, what I mentioned before, it's not what happens to you that matters so much as how you interpret what happens to you. And so if you're not fulfilled at work, one of the things I would really suggest people to do is to tap into gratitude and what is working. And if you think about, I'm grateful for a job, I'm grateful for my steady paycheck, I'm grateful for colleagues I like, then you're going to start noticing the things that are working in your job to help you shift your mindset about your job. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing, the reason why I had said yes and no, why I had said no, is because sometimes like it's also possible for people to reach a breaking point where it's just like you just can't tolerate it anymore for whatever reason. And I've been there myself. And so that's why my answer is nuanced. Like, yes, I think you can try by shifting your mindset, but if you do that and it still doesn't work, then the reality is like, okay, you have to change what isn't working.
Yeah. Oh, I love that call out of like the idea of not really having the choice or not having that option versus like kind of investigating that. Because you're right, there are plenty of people in plenty of situations, all different in myriad ways, but like there are plenty of people that are in situations that they cannot look for a new job. And but if you start from that place and you know that like it's just not possible, it's not that you don't have options, right? You have options. It's just you probably need to get a little bit more creative or reframe, like we talked about earlier. Like, what can you change? Is there anything about this that you can improve? If not, and that's like probably going to be more than just one question, but like, if not, what can be done elsewhere that can bring you that fulfillment that you don't have in your job? When I was working for an incredibly soulless legal firm who I will not name, I found, I had a lot of problems with what they were doing. It was like just not great with my own morals and ethics. And so I ended up doing volunteering. And that was something that brought me a lot more fulfillment. And I felt better about, the impact I was having on the world. And when, my own mental health struggles with, depression and bipolar disorder made it very difficult for me to be able to volunteer for other people, then I turned it inwards and like focused on me and making myself be less miserable, feel better, outside of work, so that I had something to look forward to that was going to, make me feel like I was not draining constantly.
Correct. And I think that you bring up a really good point. And at one point, that's what I was also doing as well, where like I didn't find a lot of fulfillment in work. So I was very intentional about how I spent my time outside of work and like feeling myself in other ways, whether it was like classes I was taking or people I was spending time with, and like being intentional about like how can I use my time to better understand myself and what it is that I want to be doing going forward if like what I'm doing at work is not helping me with that. And so again, this is like going back to my original spiel of how like purpose is not just something that exists within the workplace and that you can find purpose and meaning outside of work. It's just that it requires people to be intentional about how they're spending their time and like really reflecting on like what is it that you want to be doing with your time, because it's easy to get caught up in like, oh, I'm working 8 hours a day, I come home, I'm tired, I'm just going to put on some Netflix and go to sleep. It's like breaking that and saying like, this isn't working. So like, what is it that I want to do with my time instead to better understand myself and to position myself to do something different in the near or distant future?
Yeah. Oh, loving this. Okay. We have, let's see, about 7 minutes left, and I want to make sure we get to as many questions as possible. So we do have one question here. There's two left that I know we want to try and get to. The first one, I'm going to read this one out. If you are the person that sent this question in, we would love a little more context, so that way Angela can kind of give you an answer on it. So I'm going to read out this question. If it's yours, let us know. You can type in the chat. You can raise your hand if you want to come off mute and talk about it. Just let us know. And then once I read that out, if we don't have an immediate response, we'll go to the other question and hope that we can get to both. So the question that we want context on is, what should I do if I'm seeing a lot of opportunities at work, but I'm feeling stuck? How can I know what is blocking me from growing? There's some context here that we'd like to get. So if you want to come on the line and talk to Angela, or if you want to share some more details about your situation in the chat, please feel free. Until we see action there, one question I want to get to, this person said, I feel like I don't even know what I want anymore. Do you have any tips for connecting with my core values? So we started talking about this, right? And I loved your advice of like looking to what you either envy or admire or value in other people to try and see what you would want to see more of in yourself. Can you expand on that and tell us like maybe some ways that you've done this in your life?
Yeah. I think it's quite, in this case, simple and self-explanatory. So if you see someone, whatever it is that they're doing or whatever it is that they have, and you recognize that it's causing you to feel a certain way, rather than like leaning into, again, the feelings of like jealousy, like I think that remember that like what you see in other people is already something that exists within you. It's about cultivating that quality so that you can get to where they are. And so it's different for different people because different people want different things. So that's one way of approaching it. And then the other two ways of approaching of better understanding what your core values are would be one, like again, cataloging the moments in your life that have brought a lot of joy and like what are the common threads between those moments. And then two, also thinking about and reflecting on times that you've been angry, because usually when we're angry, it's a violation of our values or things that are important to us that can also inform like what matters to you.
Ooh, I'm loving that, to pay attention to the anger. That is something I am not good at, but definitely an area that would do with some improving. I'm not seeing any input or anybody wanting to come on and ask. Let's see. Oh, we did get somebody. Okay, so this person, they're kind of reframing it. They're saying, how would you recommend someone who is trying to excel in their current job and sees a lot of growth opportunities and learning opportunities, but feels like they're stuck in a rut? This person is in technology as a project manager, which I do know is different than product, but I tend to mess those up. So, so if this person's a technology project manager, what would you advise this person? If you see all these opportunities, but you feel like you're still stuck in a rut, how should this person proceed?
Why isn't the person pursuing the opportunities? What's holding you back from pursuing the opportunities that are readily available? Addressing that would be the first step.
I like that. So look at it in terms of, is not just like, is there an opportunity or isn't there, but like, why don't I want to pursue this? We actually had somebody else that wrote in, and I was kind of wondering if these were from the same person or not. But this person had asked about how to grow your career without losing happiness. They said, every time that I've focused on growing professionally, I ended up out of touch with my personal life or my personal values. Have you had to balance this? Have you had clients that have balanced this well? What have you seen?
Well, I mean, when I hear that question, like what I'm getting at, or the thought that I have is like, okay, maybe this person wants to be promoted, or maybe this person wants like a managerial position. But then in getting that position or in striving for that position, they're losing work-life balance or a sense of self. And then, so the first question I ask is like, do you really want that promotion? Is that what you really want versus what you think you should want? And then the second thing is that past experiences don't dictate future experiences. So don't let bad experiences from the past convince you that this is what things have to be like in the future.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, I think that's something we could all use more practice in, is this idea of like, just because it's not great now does not mean it has to be not great forever. That's a hard one to sit with. Okay, Angela, we're almost out of time. I want to share some links with people for where they can connect with you and all that kind of stuff. While I'm sharing the links in the chat, why don't you give people an idea of what these links are for and where you want them to go with them?
Yes, it's been a pleasure spending time with you guys. I hope that this chat has been helpful. So Meg's probably going to share with you my 6 steps to purpose, which is just a visual representation of the steps that I went over. In case you're a visual person, feel free to go to my website and get a copy of that guide so that you can go over it on your own. And then the second thing that Meg will send over is a calendar link if you want to book a free consultation to further chat, just for me to understand like where you are, where you'd like to be, and if I can be of support to you on your journey through coaching. And always feel free to reach out. Again, my email, or you can reach out to me on my website. I'm always happy to answer any questions that you may have. And again, just thank you for choosing to spend time today here. You could have been doing other things, and I'm just grateful that you're here, and I hope that it's been helpful for you. And if in terms of what I hope you walk away with, I think the one thing is that I hope that you make choices that reflect who you are so that you can lead a life that feels authentic and meaningful to you.
Ooh, I'm loving all of this. Angela, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been wonderful to get to spend the last hour with you. I think that there's based on the chat alone, I can tell there were a lot of people that got some very, very impactful information out of this. And I want to echo Angela's thanks. Thank you to all of our attendees for participating, for the great questions you submitted when you registered. We're so, so, so grateful to have these opportunities to connect with all of you. So thank you all for that. That is going to bring us to the end of our event today. I threw some links in the chat. Like Angela had said, I threw in links for her Calendly link to book a free consultation, another one for the steps to for the free copy of 6 steps, as well as links to our new chats coming up and our community space and our YouTube channel and all that good stuff. So I want to echo Angela's thanks for spending time with us today. Special shout out to our YouTube watchers. If you're watching the live stream, thank you so much. And I cannot wait until we get the chance to talk again and to share more of your amazing expertise and knowledge with our community. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's going to wrap us up for Thursday, y'all. Have a wonderful rest of your day. If we don't see you before the weekend, make sure it is safe, happy, and healthy. And we cannot wait to see you again on another amazing upcoming Power to Fly event. So register now. Bye, y'all.